My name is Ethan Carter, 5 years. That was how long Olivia and I had been together. 5 years of birthdays, 5 years of vacations, 5 years of promises, and 5 years of believing I knew the woman I loved. Looking back now, that was probably the biggest mistake I ever made. The night everything changed didn't feel important at first. It was just a normal Tuesday. Olivia was in the shower. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a basketball game while answering emails on my laptop. The apartment was quiet, comfortable, safe. At least, that's what I thought. Then a notification appeared, a soft ding. I glanced toward the coffee table. Olivia's tablet lit up. We shared almost everything: passwords, bills, streaming accounts. There had never been a reason not to trust each other. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't looking for anything, but the message appeared right on the screen, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. My eyes froze. The message read, "Last night was worth every risk." For a second, I just stared. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was from a friend. Maybe there was some explanation. I grabbed the tablet. My hands already felt cold. The sender's name was Ryan. I had heard that name before. A co-worker, someone from her office. Someone she talked about occasionally. Nothing special. Or so I thought. My stomach tightened. I opened the conversation. The first message hit me like a punch. Then another, and another, and another. My breathing became shallow. I wasn't reading messages anymore. I was watching my entire relationship fall apart. Photos, flirting, private jokes, hotel reservations, plans, lies. So many lies. My heart hammered against my chest. I felt sick, actually sick. The kind of sick where your body forgets how to function. I kept scrolling. I wish I hadn't. Every message hurt more than the last. Then I found one that completely shattered me. Ryan had written, "Does Ethan suspect anything?" Olivia replied almost immediately, "Not a chance. He trusts me too much." I stopped breathing. Those 6 words hurt more than the affair itself. Because she was right. I trusted her completely. I trusted her with everything, and she knew it. The bathroom door was still closed. The shower was still running. I had maybe 2 minutes before she came out. 2 minutes to decide what kind of man I was going to be. Part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom. Part of me wanted to throw the tablet against the wall. Part of me wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there, silent, frozen. I kept reading. The messages went back months, longer than I expected. Long enough to make me realize this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't one bad decision. This was a choice she had been making over and over again, every single day. Then I saw a message from Olivia, a message sent only 3 hours earlier. "I love him, but I'm not in love with him anymore." I stared at those words, read them again, then again. 5 years, reduced to 1 sentence. The shower turned off. My heart nearly stopped. Quickly, I locked the tablet and placed it exactly where it had been. Seconds later, Olivia walked into the living room. She smiled when she saw me. The same smile I had fallen in love with years ago. "Hey," she said. "Hey." My voice sounded normal. I still don't know how. She sat beside me. "How was your day?" "Good question. How was my day?" "Well, about 30 seconds ago, I discovered my girlfriend had been cheating on me." But somehow I answered, "Not bad." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. The kiss felt different now. Everything felt different. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I realized I had no idea who she was. "What's wrong?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Nothing." She nodded. Then she grabbed her tablet. For a brief second, panic flashed across her face. She checked the screen, checked her messages, then relaxed. She thought her secret was safe. She thought I knew nothing, and I let her believe it. The rest of the evening felt like a nightmare. We ate dinner together, watched TV together, talked about random things. The entire time, I kept thinking the same thing. How many times had she lied to me? How many conversations had been fake? How many smiles had been fake? How many "I love yous" had been fake? That night, we got into bed. She curled up beside me like always. A few minutes later, she whispered, "Love you." For a moment, I couldn't answer, because I wasn't sure if the woman beside me even existed anymore. Finally, I said it back, "Love you too." The words tasted like poison. A few minutes later, her breathing slowed. She was asleep, peaceful, comfortable, while my entire world burned around me. I quietly got out of bed, walked into the living room, opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the darkness. I sat there for a long time, thinking, hurting, trying to understand how everything had changed in a single night. Then I made a decision. Not revenge, not yet, not confrontation, not yet. I created a folder on my desktop. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed 2 simple words. Exit plan. I stared at the name for several seconds. Something inside me changed, because for the first time since reading those messages, I wasn't thinking about saving the relationship. I was thinking about saving myself, and I had no idea that this was only the beginning. The deeper I dug, the worse the truth would become. The next morning, I woke up before Olivia. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Then I saw her sleeping beside me, and the truth came crashing back. The messages, Ryan, the lies, the betrayal. I stared at the ceiling and felt a strange emptiness. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. The woman beside me had broken something inside me, and she didn't even know it. When Olivia finally woke up, she smiled. Morning. Morning. She kissed me. I kissed her back. I hated that I did. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed time. I needed answers. Most importantly, I needed a plan. Because one thing had become clear. The Ethan she thought she knew was gone, and the man replacing him wasn't going to be blindsided twice. The first few weeks were torture. Every lie felt bigger now. Every excuse sounded fake. Every late meeting felt suspicious. One Friday evening, Olivia walked into the apartment carrying her purse. I have to stay late tonight. I looked up from my laptop. Big project? She nodded instantly. Yeah, probably won't be home until 10. I almost laughed. The lie came so easily, too easily. Okay, she smiled. Thanks for understanding. The second she left, my chest tightened. Part of me wanted to follow her. Part of me wanted proof. But another part of me already knew the truth. Proof wouldn't make it hurt less. Still, I couldn't stop myself. 30 minutes later, I was sitting inside my car, watching, waiting. Then I saw her. Not at the office, not near the office. She walked into a restaurant downtown. Ryan was already waiting. The moment she saw him, she smiled. A smile I hadn't seen in months. Then she kissed him. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The pain was physical, like someone had shoved a knife into my chest. But I didn't get out. I didn't confront them. I simply watched. Then I drove away, because I realized something important. The goal wasn't catching her. I had already caught her. The goal was rebuilding myself. A month later, I started going to the gym again. The first workout nearly killed me. Everything hurt, my legs, my back, my lungs. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides heartbreak. I felt progress. The gym became my escape. Every workout made me stronger. Every session gave me control over something. My body improved, my confidence improved, my sleep improved. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed. You've been working out a lot lately. Yeah, she smiled. You look good. Funny. She was finally paying attention, right when I had stopped needing it. At work, things started changing too. For months, my entire focus had been on survival. Now I had extra energy, extra motivation. I poured everything into my career. One afternoon, my manager called me into his office. I've been reviewing your numbers. I sat down. He smiled. They're impressive. I blinked. Really? Really? For the first time in a long time, someone was looking at me with respect instead of deception. A week later, I received a promotion, a significant one, more responsibility, more money, more opportunities. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I felt angry, because 6 months earlier, I would have rushed home to tell Olivia. Now I didn't even care. That was around the time Sophia Reed entered my life. She worked on another project team. Smart, funny, direct. The type of person who said exactly what she thought. One afternoon, she caught me staring at my computer screen. You look miserable. I laughed. Thanks. I'm serious. I know. She studied me. Relationship problems. I nearly dropped my coffee. Was it that obvious? She shrugged. Only to someone who's been there. For a moment, Neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. "You don't have to tell me." That surprised me. Most people wanted details, drama, gossip. Sophia didn't. She simply respected boundaries, and somehow that made me trust her. Over the next few months, we became friends. Nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate, just friendship, something I desperately needed. Sometimes we'd grab coffee after work. Sometimes we'd talk during lunch. She never asked questions I didn't want to answer, and she never pretended life was easy. One day she looked at me and asked, "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "I think you're stronger than you realize." I laughed. "You don't know me." "I know enough." I didn't believe her. Not then. But those words stayed with me. Meanwhile, Olivia kept lying, kept cheating, kept pretending. And every day, I cared a little less. That scared me. Not because I missed her, because I didn't. The love was fading, slowly, quietly, like a fire running out of fuel. One evening, we sat together watching television. She laughed at something on the screen. Then she grabbed my hand. A year ago, that would have meant everything. Now it felt empty, like a performance, like she was acting. The worst part, I wasn't sure she even realized it. By month 5, my life looked completely different. I had lost weight, gained confidence, earned more money, built stronger friendships. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger. And Olivia had no idea. She still thought she controlled the story. She still thought she was fooling me. One night, I learned how wrong she was. Around midnight, I got up for water. As I walked past the bedroom door, I heard Olivia talking on the phone, softly, quietly, trying not to wake me. I stopped moving. Then I heard her laugh, a laugh I knew too well. Ryan. It had to be Ryan. Then she said something that made me freeze, something she never expected me to hear. "He still has no idea." They both laughed, actually laughed, as if I were a joke, as if I were stupid, as if I were blind. For a moment, silence filled the hallway. I stood there in the darkness, listening, thinking. Then something unexpected happened. I smiled, not because it was funny, because it confirmed something. She still believed she was winning. She still believed she was in control. She still believed I was the clueless boyfriend sleeping in the next room. And that belief was about to become the biggest mistake of her life. Because while she thought she was hiding the truth, I had been preparing for 6 months, and I was nowhere near finished. The morning after I overheard Olivia laughing about me, I expected to feel angry. Instead, I felt calm. Not peaceful, not happy, just calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop fighting reality. For months, I had been hoping for a different ending. Maybe she'd confess. Maybe she'd stop. Maybe she'd choose us. But deep down, I already knew the truth. She wasn't going to change. So I stopped waiting and started building a future she wasn't part of. A few weeks later, my promotion became official. My manager called me into his office. "Ethan, congratulations." I shook his hand. "Thank you. You earned this." Those 3 words hit me harder than he realized, because for months, I had been living with someone who lied to me every day. Hearing honest praise felt strange, almost unfamiliar. When I left the office, I sat in my car for several minutes, just thinking. The old version of me would have called Olivia immediately. Not anymore. I drove home without telling her. That night, she noticed my good mood. "What happened?" I shrugged. "Nothing." She frowned. "You seem happy." "I had a good day," she smiled. "That's great." Then she looked down at her phone, probably texting Ryan. The moment passed, and for the first time, I realized something. I no longer wanted her approval. The next step was my finances. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted freedom. Every month, I quietly moved money into a separate savings account. I reviewed investments, updated passwords, organized documents, prepared for independence. It felt strange, like I was planning my escape from a burning building while the fire was still spreading. But every step made me stronger. Every decision gave me control. For months, Olivia had been making choices behind my back. Now I was making my own. Meanwhile, Sophia remained one of the few bright spots in my life. One afternoon, we grabbed coffee after work. She noticed I was distracted. "You've got that look again," I laughed. "What look?" "The look that says you're carrying the weight of the world." "Maybe I am," she smiled. Then, put some of it down. Wish it were that easy. It usually isn't. I stared at my coffee. Then I asked something I'd been wondering for months. Have you ever had someone completely destroy your trust? Sophia looked out the window. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she nodded. Yes. What did you do? She thought about it. Then she said something I never forgot. I stopped trying to understand why they hurt me. I looked at her. What do you mean? Sometimes people hurt you because they're selfish. Sometimes because they're broken. Sometimes because they're weak. She shrugged. The reason doesn't change the damage. That sentence stayed with me for days, because I had spent months trying to understand Olivia, trying to understand her choices, trying to understand her lies. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe understanding wasn't necessary. As the weeks passed, something strange happened. My life kept improving. Olivia's didn't. At first it was small. She became more stressed, more irritable, more emotional. Then the arguments started. Not huge arguments, little ones, random complaints. One evening, she walked into the apartment, looking annoyed. The kitchen is a mess. I looked around. It wasn't. Looks fine to me. She crossed her arms. You never help enough. I blinked. That was new. I do plenty. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Then she disappeared into the bedroom. I sat there confused. A few months ago, I would have chased after her, apologized, tried fixing things. Now I just went back to reading. That seemed to bother her even more. The pattern continued. Every week, she found something new to criticize. The dishes, the laundry, the apartment, my work hours, my hobbies, everything. At first, I couldn't understand it. Then one night, it finally clicked. She needed me to be the bad guy. If she could convince herself that I was the problem, then she wouldn't have to feel guilty. She wasn't trying to fix our relationship. She was trying to justify destroying it. The realization hurt, but it also set me free, because once I understood that, I stopped taking her criticism personally. 3 weeks later, I made a discovery that changed everything. It happened completely by accident. I was reviewing old files I had saved from Olivia's messages, dates, photos, conversations, evidence, mostly because I wanted a complete timeline. At first, I assumed the affair had lasted around 6 months. That was horrible enough. Then I noticed something strange. A date didn't match. I checked again, then again. My stomach tightened. There was an older message. Much older. Nearly 2 years old. I frowned. That couldn't be right. I opened another screenshot. Then another. Then another. The room suddenly felt smaller. No, no, no. My heart started pounding. The affair wasn't 6 months old. It wasn't even 1 year old. It had been happening for almost 2 years. 2 years. I sat frozen in front of my laptop, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe. Everything I'd believed was wrong. Every timeline, every assumption, every hope, gone. For months, I'd told myself one thing. At least the betrayal hadn't started during the hardest period of my life. At least she hadn't done it then. Now I wasn't so sure. With shaking hands, I kept searching, and eventually, I found the date. The exact date. The moment everything shattered, I stared at the screen, my vision blurred, because I recognized that day immediately. How could I not? It was burned into my memory forever. The date of my father's funeral. I felt sick, actually sick. I pushed away from the desk. My chair rolled backward. For several seconds, I simply stared into space, trying to process what I had just learned. While I was standing beside my father's grave, while I was struggling to hold myself together, while family members were hugging me, while I was saying goodbye to the man who raised me, Olivia had been texting Ryan. Not only texting him, flirting with him, meeting him, choosing him. The pain hit differently this time, deeper, sharper, crueler, because this wasn't just cheating anymore. This was betrayal at my lowest moment, my most vulnerable moment. I looked down at the screen again. Part of me wanted to throw the laptop across the room. Part of me wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there in silence. A memory suddenly appeared in my head. The funeral, the rain, the black clothes. Olivia squeezing my hand, telling me she'd always be there for me, telling me I wasn't alone. And now I knew the truth. Even that memory was poisoned. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt something dangerous growing inside me. Not heartbreak, not sadness, not disappointment, something colder, something stronger. Because if she could betray me during the worst day of my life, then she truly had no idea who she had become. And soon, she was going to find out that I wasn't the same man anymore either. After discovering the truth about my father's funeral, something inside me changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but permanently. The pain was still there, the betrayal still hurt. The memories still haunted me, but the hope was gone. And strangely enough, that made life easier. Because hope had been the thing keeping me trapped. The hope that Olivia would become the person I thought she was. The hope that there was some explanation. The hope that everything could somehow be fixed. Now that hope was dead, and for the first time in a long time, I could see clearly. Over the next few weeks, I became even more focused on myself. The gym, work, friends, my future. Those became my priorities. Not Olivia, she noticed. Of course she did. One evening, I came home from work and found her sitting on the couch. She wasn't watching television. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was waiting for me. That alone was unusual. "Hey," I said. "Hey." Something felt off. I dropped my keys on the counter. "You okay?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." I didn't believe her, but I didn't push. A few months ago, I would have. Now I didn't care enough to investigate. I walked toward the kitchen. Then she spoke again. "Ethan," I turned around. "What?" She studied my face. "You've been different lately." There it was. I had been expecting that conversation. Honestly, I was surprised it had taken this long. I shrugged. "Different how?" She frowned. "I don't know." A few seconds passed. Then she finally said it. "You feel distant." I almost laughed. Distant? The woman cheating on me was accusing me of being distant. The irony was unbelievable. But I kept my expression calm. "Maybe I've just been busy. Maybe." She didn't sound convinced. And that was the beginning. From that point on, she started paying attention. Really paying attention. For months, she had been focused on Ryan. Now she was watching me, trying to understand what had changed, trying to figure out why she no longer felt in control. One night she asked, "Want to watch a movie together?" I looked up from my laptop. "Maybe later." Her face fell slightly. Another night she asked, "Want to go out this weekend?" "Already have plans." "What plans?" "Meeting some friends." That answer seemed to bother her. Because for years, I had always made her my priority. Now I had a life outside of her, and she wasn't used to it. At the same time, problems were beginning to appear in her secret relationship. I didn't know every detail, but I knew enough. Because people make mistakes when they're stressed. And Olivia was definitely stressed. One evening, I walked into the apartment and heard her arguing on the phone. She didn't realize I was home. Her voice was sharp, frustrated, angry. I said, "Not now." A pause, then more silence. Then, "No, Ryan. Stop." I froze. "Ryan. So things weren't perfect after all. Interesting." I quietly stepped back outside and waited a minute before entering again. When I walked in the second time, she immediately hung up. Her face looked pale. "You okay?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Yeah." The lie was obvious, and for the first time, I realized something. She wasn't happy, not with me, not with Ryan, not with herself. The fantasy she had created was starting to crack. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward. My promotion was going well, my savings continued growing, and my friendship with Sophia became stronger. One afternoon after work, we were having coffee when she looked at me carefully. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "You seem lighter lately." I laughed. "Lighter?" "Yeah. That's a strange way to describe someone." She smiled. "You used to look like you were carrying something heavy. And now?" "Now it looks like you're finally putting it down." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Because she was right. I was changing. The betrayal still mattered, but it no longer controlled me. And that terrified Olivia more than anything. The following month, her behavior became increasingly strange. Some days she acted cold, other days she acted incredibly affectionate. It felt like she was trying different versions of herself, trying to figure out which one would get a reaction, but I rarely gave her one. The more calm I became, the more nervous she became. One evening, she suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind while I was making dinner. I nearly dropped the spoon. That kind of affection had become rare. "What was that for?" I asked. She shrugged. "Nothing." I turned around. For a split second, she looked scared. Not guilty, scared. As if she was afraid of losing something. The problem was that she had already lost it. She just didn't know it yet. Then came the question that changed everything. It happened on a rainy Thursday night. We were sitting in the living room. A movie played quietly in the background. Neither of us was really watching. Olivia seemed distracted, restless, like something was bothering her. Finally, she muted the television. I looked over. What? She took a deep breath, then another, and another. The question clearly mattered to her. "Ethan? Yeah?" She stared at me, longer than usual. Then she asked, "If I ever cheated on you?" My heartbeat instantly doubled. "What would you do?" The room became silent. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. For a second I thought I had imagined the question. Then I saw the fear in her eyes. She was serious. I don't know why she asked. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe panic, maybe all three. But in that moment, I realized something important. She wasn't asking because she wanted the answer. She was asking because she was terrified of it. I leaned back against the couch, thinking carefully, choosing every word. Then I finally spoke. "Depends." Her face tightened. "Depends on what?" I held her gaze. "Depends how long I've known." The color drained from her face, instantly. It happened so fast I almost missed it. For a fraction of a second, pure panic flashed across her eyes. Then she forced a laugh, a nervous laugh, a fake laugh. "That's a weird answer." I shrugged. "Maybe." She looked away. The conversation ended there. But something had changed. I could feel it. For the first time, she suspected the truth. Not all of it, but enough. And that possibility terrified her. The next few days felt different. She watched me constantly, studied my expressions, tried to read my thoughts, tried to figure out what I knew. But the more she searched for answers, the calmer I became. And the calmer I became, the more anxious she became. The balance of power had completely shifted. She just hadn't accepted it yet. Then one night, everything got worse. I fell asleep around midnight, exhausted after a long day. The apartment was quiet, dark, still. At some point during the night, Olivia got out of bed, slowly, carefully. Thinking I was asleep, she walked into the living room, turned on my laptop, and started searching, looking for answers, looking for proof, looking for the truth. A few minutes later, she found it. The folder. The folder I had created 6 months earlier. The folder she was never supposed to see. The folder that contained screenshots, evidence, messages, dates, everything. Its name was simple, Exit Plan, and the moment she opened it, her entire world began to collapse. I woke up before my alarm. The apartment was quiet. But something felt wrong. You know that feeling when your mind notices something before your eyes do? That was what happened. I sat up in bed. The space beside me was empty. Olivia wasn't there. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I checked the time. 4:17 a.m. Too early for work. Too early for anything. Then I saw the faint light coming from the living room. My heart immediately knew. She found it. The folder. The truth. Everything. For a few seconds I stayed where I was, listening, waiting. The silence felt heavy, almost painful. Then I got out of bed and walked toward the living room. Every step felt slower than the last. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. Olivia was sitting on the couch. My laptop was open. The folder was on the screen, and she looked completely frozen. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. Tears covered her cheeks. She didn't notice me at first. She just stared at the screen, scrolling, reading, learning, the same way I had 6 months earlier. Only now, she was the one watching her world collapse. Finally, she looked up, and our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. The silence stretched between us. Long, painful, unavoidable. Then she whispered, "Ethan." I didn't answer. Her voice shook. "How long?" There it was. The question she was truly asking. How long had I known? How long had I been pretending? How long had the lie been dead? I walked into the room, closed the laptop, then sat down across from her. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. She looked terrified, not guilty, not defensive, terrified, as if she finally understood she had lost control. Then she asked the question that changed everything, the question that gave this story its title. Why are you so calm? Her voice cracked. Why aren't you angry? I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I had loved for 5 years, the woman who had spent 2 years lying to me, the woman who thought she knew me. Then I gave her the answer she never expected, because I've known for 6 months. She froze, completely froze. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. For a few seconds, she looked like she couldn't breathe, as if her brain refused to process what she had just heard. Then she shook her head. No. I stayed silent. No. Her voice became louder. No. That's impossible. I leaned back in my chair. It's not. She stared at me, trying desperately to find a crack in my expression, trying desperately to prove I was lying. But there was nothing left to hide, nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose. The truth was finally in the room, and neither of us could escape it. You knew? I nodded. For 6 months? Yes. Tears filled her eyes again. But she stopped, trying to understand, trying to rebuild reality, trying to figure out how the man she thought she was fooling had actually been watching everything. Then she asked how. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, because after all this time, the answer felt almost ridiculous. Your tablet. Her face immediately changed. The message. Instantly, she knew which one. The message that started everything. The message she thought I would never see. The message that destroyed 5 years in a matter of seconds. I watched realization hit her. Then came the next emotion. Fear. Real fear. Because now she understood something important. Every lie she had told during those 6 months, I had heard it knowing the truth. Every fake business trip, every fake meeting, every fake excuse, I had known. And suddenly all those memories became horrifying from her perspective. She covered her mouth. Oh my God. I didn't respond. For months I had imagined this moment, the confrontation, the confession, the explosion. But now that it was here, I felt strangely detached, like I was watching someone else's life. Olivia looked at the laptop, then back at me, then at the laptop again. I don't understand. I stayed quiet. She wiped tears from her face. If you knew, her voice broke, why didn't you leave? That was a fair question. One I had asked myself many times. I looked out the window. The sun was beginning to rise. The sky was turning grey. A new day. A fitting moment for the truth. Finally, I answered, because I wasn't ready. She stared at me. I needed time. More tears appeared. I needed to understand what happened. Silence. I needed to rebuild my life. More silence. And most importantly, I looked directly into her eyes. I needed to stop loving you. That one hit her harder than anything else. I could see it, the pain, the realization, the finality. Because until that moment, some part of her probably believed she could still fix this. That belief died right there. She started crying harder. I never wanted this. The words almost made me laugh. Not because they were funny, because they were absurd. I looked at her calmly. You chose it. She lowered her head. No argument, no excuse, no denial. For the first time, she couldn't run from responsibility, because the evidence was sitting right in front of her. Months of lies, months of betrayal, years actually, not months, years. Then I decided to tell her the part she didn't know, the part that still haunted me. I found the messages from my father's funeral. Her entire body stiffened. The room became silent again. She looked like someone had punched her, because she knew. She knew exactly what I was talking about. I can explain. No. My voice stopped her instantly. The room went quiet. I don't need an explanation. Her tears fell faster. It wasn't what it looked like. I stared at her. For the first time that night, anger finally appeared. Not loud anger, not explosive anger, the dangerous kind, the quiet kind. You cheated on me while I was burying my father. She couldn't look at me. I know. You lied while I was grieving. More tears. I know. You held my hand and promised you'd be there for me. She started sobbing and finally whispered, I know. The room felt heavy, like years of pain were finally escaping. Then something unexpected happened. Her phone rang. The sound echoed through the apartment. Both of us looked down. The screen lit up. One name appeared. Ryan, the man who had helped destroy everything. The man she had chosen over me. The man she had risked everything for. The phone kept ringing, over and over. Olivia stared at the screen. Then something strange happened. She didn't answer. She didn't even move. The phone stopped. A few seconds later, it started ringing again. Ryan, again. Still she didn't answer. Because for the first time in 2 years, she wasn't thinking about him. She was finally facing the consequences of her choices, and judging by the look on her face, she was realizing something terrifying. She hadn't just lost me, she might lose everything. Ryan called 7 times that morning. Olivia never answered. She just sat there on the couch, staring at her phone, staring at the floor, staring at the life she had spent years destroying. The sun had fully risen by then. The apartment looked exactly the same walls, the same furniture, the same photographs, but everything felt different, because the truth was finally out. And once the truth comes out, nothing ever goes back to normal. Around noon, I packed a bag, not because I was angry, because I was done. There was a difference. Olivia watched me from across the room. Her eyes were swollen from crying. What are you doing? I folded another shirt. Leaving. Her face immediately crumbled. Ethan. I didn't stop packing. Please. The words sounded desperate. I continued folding clothes. Ethan, please talk to me. I zipped the bag shut. We already talked. Her voice cracked. No, we didn't. I looked at her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said something she needed to hear. The conversation should have happened 2 years ago. The words hit her like a truck, because she knew I was right. By the end of the week, I had moved into a new apartment. It wasn't huge, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The first night felt strange. Quiet, lonely, peaceful. I sat on the floor eating takeout because my furniture hadn't arrived yet. And for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not happiness, not excitement. Relief. The constant anxiety was gone. The lies were gone. The pretending was gone. I could finally breathe. Olivia, however, wasn't doing well. I learned that pretty quickly. Not because I was checking on her, because she kept contacting me. Calls, texts, emails, voicemails, every day. At first I ignored them. Then one evening, curiosity got the better of me. I opened one of her messages. It was short. Can we please talk? Another. I made a mistake. Another. I miss you. Then another. Please answer. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked my phone. Because 6 months earlier, those messages would have meant everything. Now they meant nothing. The timing was wrong. The damage was done. A month passed. Then another. Life kept moving forward. Work was going great. The gym became part of my routine. My friendship with Sophia remained strong. Slowly, things started feeling normal again. Not the old normal, a better one, a healthier one, a life built on truth instead of lies. Then the cracks in Olivia's world became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, a mutual friend named Jason called me. Have you heard? Heard what? There was a pause. Then Jason sighed. Ryan and Olivia broke up. I wasn't surprised, not even a little. What happened? Another pause. Honestly? Yeah. He found out she was lying to him too. I almost laughed. The irony was unbelievable. Ryan had spent 2 years helping someone cheat, then became shocked when that same person wasn't honest. Some lessons arrive late, but they arrive. Over the next few weeks, more information surfaced. Ryan and Olivia's relationship had been a disaster. Arguments, jealousy, trust issues, constant drama. Apparently, once the excitement of secrecy disappeared, there wasn't much left. And honestly, that made sense. Because relationships built on betrayal usually don't become healthy overnight. They carry the same poison that created them. Eventually, it spreads everywhere. Meanwhile, people were starting to learn the truth. Not the version Olivia told, the actual truth, the timeline, the affair, the lies, the funeral, everything. And suddenly, the sympathy she expected wasn't showing up. Most people weren't cruel, but they weren't blind either. Actions have consequences. Eventually, those consequences arrived, one by one. About 3 months after I moved out, Olivia called me again. For some reason, I answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she whispered, "Thank you." I frowned. For what? A painful laugh escaped her. For not trying to destroy me. That surprised me, because honestly, I could have. I had evidence, screenshots, proof. Enough information to make her life much worse. But revenge had stopped mattering months ago. I wasn't interested in ruining her future. I was interested in building mine. You did that yourself. Silence. Then, I know. A few weeks later, we met briefly to exchange some remaining paperwork. The moment I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally, like someone carrying years of regret. We sat across from each other. The conversation was awkward at first. Then suddenly she asked something unexpected. "Can I tell you the truth?" I leaned back. "You should try." For a moment, she almost smiled. Then her eyes filled with tears, and she said something that explained everything, something I would never forget. "I thought you'd always stay." The room became silent. I stared at her, processing those words, and suddenly, everything made sense. The lies, the cheating, the disrespect, the selfishness. She never thought there would be consequences. She never thought I would leave. She never thought I would choose myself. She believed I would always be there, no matter what she did, no matter how badly she treated me, no matter how many times she betrayed me. And that belief had become her biggest mistake. Because love without respect eventually dies, and once it dies, there isn't much left to save. That night, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about those words. "I thought you'd always stay." The sentence echoed inside my head. Not because it hurt, because it taught me something. People often take for granted the things they think they can't lose, until one day, they lose them, and then it's too late. A few months later, life felt stable again. The drama was gone. The chaos was gone. The heartbreak had become a memory instead of a wound. I honestly believed that chapter of my life was finished. Then one evening my phone vibrated. A text message appeared. The sender's name surprised me, Olivia. The message was short. "Can we meet one last time? There's something I need to say." I stared at the screen. For a long moment, I considered ignoring it. Maybe I should have. Maybe I shouldn't have. But eventually, curiosity won. And without realizing it, I agreed to a meeting that would finally bring our story to an end. I almost cancelled 3 times. The closer the meeting got, the less I wanted to go. Not because I was afraid, because I was tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the memories. Tired of revisiting a chapter of my life that I had worked so hard to leave behind. But a small part of me still wanted answers. Not because I needed them, because I wanted closure, real closure. So on a quiet Saturday afternoon, I drove to the cafe Olivia had chosen. The same cafe we used to visit years ago, back when everything felt simple, back when I believed forever was a real thing. The irony wasn't lost on me. I parked my car and sat there for a moment, taking a deep breath. Then I went inside. I spotted her immediately. She was sitting near the window, alone, looking down at a cup of coffee she barely seemed to touch. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked older, because she looked different. The confidence was gone. The certainty was gone. Even the way she carried herself had changed. Regret has a way of changing people. She looked up. Our eyes met. A sad smile appeared on her face. "Hi." "Hi." I sat down across from her. Neither of us knew what to say at first. The silence wasn't awkward, just heavy, like 2 people standing among the ruins of something that once mattered. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "You said there was something you needed to say." She looked down, then back at me. For a moment, she seemed unsure where to begin. Then she laughed softly, not a happy laugh, the kind people make when they're disappointed in themselves. I've rehearsed this conversation 100 times. I didn't respond. Because honestly, there wasn't much left to say. A few seconds passed. Then, Olivia finally looked me in the eyes. "I'm sorry." I had expected those words, but hearing them still felt strange. For months after our breakup, I imagined her apologizing, imagined her understanding, imagined her finally accepting responsibility. Now it was happening. And somehow it didn't feel the way I thought it would. Because apologies arrive differently when the wound has already healed. I studied her face. For the first time since all this started, I believed she meant it. Not because of her words, because of her expression. There were no excuses, no justifications, no attempts to blame anyone else. Just regret. Pure regret. "I'm sorry for lying." She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry for cheating." Tears formed in her eyes. "I'm sorry for every excuse." She looked away. "I'm sorry for the funeral." That one hung in the air between us, heavy, painful, important. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I'll regret that for the rest of my life." I believed her. But belief didn't change anything. Some mistakes don't disappear just because someone feels bad about them. She wiped her eyes, then asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." Her voice shook. "Did you ever hate me?" The question surprised me. Not because it was difficult, because I already knew the answer. I thought about all the nights I spent angry, all the moments I spent hurt, all the months I spent rebuilding myself. Then I shook my head. "No." She looked confused. "No?" I leaned back in my chair. "I never hated you." The tears returned instantly. For some reason, that answer hurt her more than if I had said yes. She looked down, then asked, "Why?" I took a slow breath, because the answer mattered, and because it was the truth. I hated what happened. Silence. I hated the lies. More silence. I hated the betrayal. Her shoulders trembled. Then I finished. "But I didn't hate you." A tear rolled down her cheek. Because deep down, she knew exactly what I meant. After a while, she asked another question, one she had probably been carrying for months. "When did you stop loving me?" The cafe suddenly felt very quiet. I looked out the window, watching people walk past, living their lives, completely unaware of the conversation happening inside. Then I answered honestly, "Not all at once." She listened carefully. It happened little by little. More tears. Every lie took something. She nodded. Every betrayal took something. Another nod. And eventually, there was nothing left. Her eyes closed, as if hearing the words made them real, as if the final piece of hope had finally disappeared. A long silence followed. Then Olivia surprised me. "You know what the worst part is?" I looked at her. She laughed bitterly. "For a long time, I blamed Ryan." I said nothing. She continued. "I blamed temptation." Another pause. "I blamed being unhappy." She wiped another tear away. But eventually I realized something. I waited. Then she whispered, "I made every choice." For the first time since sitting down, I felt proud of her. Not because of what she had done, because she finally stopped running from it. Accountability doesn't erase damage, but it matters. Eventually she looked at me and asked, "Are you happy?" The answer came easily, "Yes." And for the first time, I saw a genuine smile on her face. Not because she liked the answer, because she was relieved by it. As strange as that sounds. I'm glad. I believed that too. For the first time in years, neither of us was lying. The conversation continued for another half hour. We talked about old memories, good memories, the kind that still made us smile, road trips, birthdays, late-night conversations, moments that existed before everything fell apart. And surprisingly, it didn't hurt, because those memories belonged to a different version of us, a version that no longer existed. Eventually, the conversation reached its natural end. Neither of us had anything left to say. The story was over. The wounds had closed. The lessons had been learned. I stood up first. Olivia looked at me, her eyes red, her expression peaceful. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked completely honest. "Goodbye, Ethan." I smiled softly. "Goodbye, Olivia." No anger, no bitterness, no hatred, just an ending. The kind endings rarely get. I walked toward the door. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the glass. The world outside looked bright, open, full of possibilities. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. Then my phone vibrated. I pulled it from my pocket. A message appeared on the screen. The sender made me smile immediately. Sophia. The text was simple. Hope your meeting went okay. Want to grab dinner tonight? For a moment, I stared at the message. Then I looked back through the cafe window. Olivia was still sitting there, watching me leave, watching the life she once had disappear into the distance. And for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't walking away from my past. I was walking toward my future. I typed a reply. Yeah, I'd like that. Then I put my phone away and continued walking, without looking back. 6 months later, I found myself standing on a balcony overlooking the city. The evening air was cool. The streets below were crowded with people heading home after work. Cars moved through the traffic. Lights filled the skyline. Everything looked normal, but my life wasn't. My life was better, not perfect, just honest. And after everything that had happened, honesty felt like a luxury. I rested my arms on the railing and smiled. A year ago, I couldn't imagine feeling this way. A year ago, I thought my life was falling apart. Now I understood something important. Sometimes life falls apart so something better can be built. Thinking too hard again, I turned around. Sophia stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. I laughed. Maybe. She walked over and handed me one. That's becoming a habit. So is judging me. She smiled. Fair. For a moment, we stood there together, watching the city, enjoying the silence. The thing I appreciated most about Sophia was how easy everything felt. No games, no manipulation, no hidden conversations, no wondering if I could trust her. For years, I thought excitement was the most important part of a relationship. Now I knew better. Peace was far more valuable. Dinner with Sophia after that final meeting with Olivia had turned into more dinners, then more conversations, then more time together. Nothing happened quickly. Neither of us wanted that. Trust isn't built overnight, especially after betrayal. Instead, we let things grow naturally. One honest conversation at a time, one good day at a time, one step at a time, and somehow that made it stronger. A few weeks later, Sophia and I were walking through a park when she suddenly stopped. I looked at her. What? She crossed her arms. You know something? Probably. You never talk about Olivia anymore. The comment caught me off guard. I thought about it for a moment, then realized she was right. I didn't. Not because I was avoiding it, because I simply didn't think about her very often anymore. The chapter was over. The wound had healed. The scar remained. But scars don't hurt every day. I smiled. I guess that's a good sign. Sophia smiled back. I think so too. The truth was simple. For a long time, I thought my story was about betrayal. Then I thought it was about revenge. Then I thought it was about karma. But eventually I realized it was about something else. It was about me, about learning who I was when everything comfortable disappeared, about discovering what remained when trust was broken, about finding strength I didn't know I had. Because if someone had told me 2 years earlier that I would survive all of this, I wouldn't have believed them. Back then, Olivia was my entire world, my plans, my future, my comfort, my home. Losing her felt impossible, until it happened. And then I learned something life-changing. People are stronger than they think. Much stronger. One rainy evening, I opened an old storage box while cleaning my apartment. Inside were photographs, movie tickets, birthday cards, memories from my relationship with Olivia. For a few seconds, I simply stared at them. The old version of me would have felt heartbreak. Now I felt something different. Gratitude. Not for the betrayal, never that, but for the lessons. Because every painful experience had pushed me toward becoming someone better, someone stronger, someone who finally respected himself. I picked up an old photograph. Olivia and I were smiling, standing on a beach, looking completely happy. For a moment, I smiled too. Not because I wanted those days back, because I accepted them. They were part of my story, just not my future. I placed the photograph back into the box and closed the lid. Then I carried it to the closet and left it there, exactly where it belonged. In the past, a few months later, I heard an update about Olivia through a mutual friend. Apparently she had changed jobs, moved to a different part of the city, started over. I genuinely hoped she was doing okay. That realization surprised me, because for a long time, I wanted karma, justice, consequences. I wanted her to feel the pain she caused. But eventually I got something better: freedom. And once you find freedom, revenge loses its appeal. I no longer needed her to suffer for me to heal. I had already healed. One evening, Sophia and I sat together watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. The city looked beautiful, peaceful. Sophia leaned her head against my shoulder. "You seem happy." I smiled. "I am. Good, simple, honest, real. The kind of moment I used to overlook. Now I appreciated every second, because I knew how quickly life could change." Later that night, I sat alone in the living room thinking about everything that had happened. The message, the affair, the lies, the 6 months of preparation, the confrontation, the goodbye, the new beginning, all of it. For years, I believed betrayal was the end of my story. I was wrong. It was the beginning of becoming the person I was supposed to be, the beginning of learning self-respect, the beginning of choosing myself. And maybe that was the greatest lesson of all. People often ask what happened when Olivia froze after learning I knew the truth. They assume that was the moment I won. It wasn't. The real victory happened long before that. The victory happened the day I stopped begging for answers, the day I stopped blaming myself, the day I started rebuilding my life, the day I realized my future didn't depend on someone else's loyalty, because by the time Olivia discovered the truth, I had already survived the heartbreak. I had already rebuilt my confidence. I had already found peace. And most importantly, I had already let her go. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it reveals you. It shows you what you're made of. It forces you to grow. It pushes you toward a version of yourself you never would have discovered otherwise. The process is painful, sometimes unbearably painful. But growth often is, and when you finally reach the other side, you realize something. The person who betrayed you didn't define your future. Your response did. As I turned off the lights and headed toward bed, my phone buzzed, a message from Sophia. Even though she had left only an hour earlier, I smiled and opened it. "Good night, sleep well. Simple, honest, real." I typed back. "Good night. See you tomorrow." Then I placed the phone on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, there was no anger, no sadness, no questions, only peace. And that peace was worth more than any revenge I could have imagined. The end.